Welcome back. It's the 0 to 100 podcast. I'm your host, WCW Poet, or William. Um, in this episode, to pair with the Spider Man Brand New Day review that has already been up and posted when I was joined by my brothers, I wanted to talk Cowboys. I'm a little late getting this out because I had already posted my reaction to the Cowboys Rams joint practice, but I didn't get to actually talk about my reaction to the Cowboys versus Seattle preseason game where the Cowboys ended up winning 17-7, and it's actually the first time the Cowboys won their first preseason game in 9 years, which is actually kind of crazy. Here's my philosophy and my thoughts on preseason. As a child, as a kid, every single game mattered. I did have this. It was fun. I had this notion in my mind that if you did really well in the preseason in terms of like winning games, that means you're going to be really crappy or garbage during the regular season because nobody really cares about the preseason. So if you were peaking or doing super well in the preseason, I felt like you really weren't, like you were shooting your best stuff. At least that's how I looked at it, because I swear every time I would see a team be killing it in the preseason, the regular season would start and they would suck. And the Cowboys were always to me like average in the preseason, or they would have like a losing record in the preseason. Um, so that's always kind of been my mindset. And then as I got older, it was more so like the only game I cared if the Cowboys were to win was the third preseason game, because that was known as the dress rehearsal game, where the starters would play like deep into the second half, like into the third quarter and stuff. So that has been changed over the last few years because the Rams, I want to say it's at least 3 or 4 years ago, the Rams just said we don't care about preseason, so our starters aren't playing in any of the preseason games, and a lot of other teams decided to follow suit, and they don't really play the starters in the preseason. So it, to me, like the best way to take it is individual performances and who stands out. And I remember like last year, actually last 2 seasons, a lot of Cowboys fans freaking out because the Cowboys would look so terrible during the preseason. And I remember I would always sit there and think like, who cares? Because half of these people, in fact, over half of these people aren't even going to be on the roster. Like if this was the actual roster, I'd be freaking out. I'd be worried. Now, I say that with all with the fact that the last 2 seasons, especially the Cowboys defense has been absolutely horrible. Like the offense is always like started maybe a little bit slow, and then they find their footing, and then they take off and become like a top three, if not number one offense. And so again, and that's usually with the off like the starters not playing any in the preseason at all. So when it comes to offense, I'm never overly concerned or not worried about what it looks like. Like I said with the Rams Cowboys joint practice, and how the Cowboys defense came out looking really well in that joint practice, and a lot of Cowboys fans are excited, and everybody's sitting there going, "Oh, here go Cowboys fans again." Listen, like, it brought me to the question of this different offseason that I've seen, and it's like Cowboy fans aren't allowed to be happy, because the first thing I see is like a lot of times, especially in the social media streets, and I spend most of my time surfing through Cowboys Twitter during the football season, but I also been spending a lot of time on Blue Sky, and it's funny because like on there I always see these posts, and the Cowboys presence on Blue Sky is nowhere near like it is on Cowboys Twitter, which is what I call Twitter, but it's still there. But it's funny, like typically when I do see it, it's always, here go Cowboys fans again, talk about it's their year, it's our year. Like the reality is, and I hate to say this, that might have been the case. It used to be the case, especially growing up in the '90s and the early 2000s. That was definitely the case. I used to say it all the freaking time. I used to always be like, Super Bowl, it's our year. Like that. That's what I used to say. Over this 30-year drought, especially the Cowboys fans that have grown up and they've seen, like, they have not seen it. I hate to admit that. Like they don't. I am blessed because I got to see the Cowboys win 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. It was awesome, and especially like going into games. knowing that they were going to win, feeling like they were going to win, knowing they were going to win for a championship, they were competing for a championship. It's just a different feeling growing up, seeing that. I give all props to the Cowboys fans of this generation because they haven't, like, they cling to this hope, but they haven't actually gotten to see it. But it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. But because of that, they never go into the season thinking, this is our year, Cowboys Super Bowl or bust. If they ever say it, it's always in jest. It's always joking. They're not serious. They don't mean it. Most of the Cowboys fans of this generation are way more critical than opposing teams fans. They're more pessimistic than opposing team fans. So that's a myth. The Cowboys fans come out as soon as something happens and like, it's our year. Like, no, they don't do it. However, they can get excited. They can get happy. And they should get happy and excited when they see good things from this team, especially compared to what we've seen from them in the offseason in previous years. I said earlier this year that this offseason just felt different. Like, it felt absolutely different to me in terms of how the Cowboys were going about their business. Like, from the front office to the coaching search and hiring a Christian Parker to the free agents that they actually went in after with Jalen Thompson and safety, actually spending money on a safety, trading for Rashad Gary, which again, that's actually kind of a typical Cowboys move in trading for a pass rusher that not giving up that much. But it's like being active, like moving up to get Caleb Downs, moving back and still getting Malachi Lawrence, like just trading for D Winters, like actually being proactive. And even like the most recent thing with Von Miller, the Von Miller sign, that it was funny to me because to see like a lot of Cowboys content creators are well respected Cowboys content creators, like poo-pooing the Von Miller. Almost it brings back that question again of like, are Cowboys fans like Cowboys fans aren't allowed to be happy? It's because there was just the fact that Von Miller got 9 sacks last year, and then there was some content creators breaking down like every single sack, and I remember like Brian Broaddus on the Doing All Right podcast having major issue with Von Miller, like analyzing his 9 sacks, and not like completely dismissing it, but almost it was almost like he was trying to say it was they were gimmicky, like they were like gimmicky sacks or something to that extent. And I don't think it was like the thing that I guess that was frustrating to me about it was 9 sacks would have led this team last year, and most Cowboys fans would have been going crazy for getting like having a player to get 9 sacks. Jadeveon Clowney, who they signed after like the first 2 games of the season, led the team in sacks with 8.5, and everybody was going crazy, like ready, like twerking for Jadeveon Clowney. Like, oh, you gotta bring him back. He needs to be here. So the move about getting Von Miller, to me, that is a Jadeveon Clowney move, and they did it before the season actually started, as opposed to waiting like 2 games in, seeing that your defense is absolutely positively garbage, and being like, oh, dear Lord, we gotta sign somebody else to try to help with this pass rush. And the other thing is that they're not asking Von Miller to be all pro, future Hall of Fame Von Miller. They just need him to be a depth guy, to bring up, to elevate the bottom of the roster, which I just think that's actually a good thing that they did it before the season actually started, when they were like, oh crap, we need some help here. And he can help mentor the other guys. Like, that's the other thing I'm excited about. He can help coach up the other guys. That's another thing I'm really excited about. So it's just, to me, it's more of the fact that the Cowboys are actually moving differently, as opposed to doing the same old stuff that has been absolutely resulting in nothing happening positive for this team. So, like, be happy, Cowboys fans. Like, you can be proud. Like, and again, I know nobody is going around out there telling, oh, we going to the Super Bowl. Like, that's not what any of this means anyway. It's just nice to see something positive and something different happening around this team. Like, there hasn't been any actual drama. And and most of the stories that have been coming out about this team has been about actual football. So let's I wanted to get into some the preseason winners thus far, only based off of the preseason games, not the Rams joint practice or the Saints joint practice that just happened this past week, but just based off of the Cowboys versus Seattle. I just wanted to go into some of the winners and losers of the preseason thus far, and I'm only taking five going up to one. And so at number five, of the preseason winners thus far. Who do we have here? At number five, we have Malik Davis. Running back two has been a topic of discussion going into this offseason. Outside of the defense, the other position that a lot of Cowboy fans wanted the team to address is somebody to pair with Javonte Williams, who no Cowboy fan was excited about Javonte Williams. If there's a Cowboys fans that's telling you they was excited about Javonte Williams going into last season, you are a liar. I do not believe you for a second. You are not being truthful because nobody cared about Javonte Williams. Everybody wanted the Cowboys to try to trade up and get Ashton Genty or, like the year before, or do something to get a running back. And, they took Jaden Blue into the late fifth round, and everybody was going crazy hoping that Jaden Blue would pay off or something like that. And Phil Maffa, like they were talking about a thunder and lightning combo of Phil Maffa and Jaden Blue. Jaden Blue and Phil Maffa didn't even see the field until pretty much the last game of the season. In terms of running back two, it's still like a topic of discussion. In fact, a lot of people were like, "Well, here's some RB rich teams in the preseason to be on the lookout for this player." Malik Davis pretty much just showed that he is clearly the second best running back on this team. Now, the Cowboys are also very clear in saying that they really want somebody else to win the job. And it's not because Malik Davis is bad. It's just they want another element to pair with Javonte. And Malik just proved in this preseason games that, hey, I can do it. And I do think it's like he reminds me of Rico Dowdle from a sense of you can see the talent is there, but it's just like you're not blown away by it, and you're still highly skeptical of it because he was this undrafted player from Florida, and so you're just kind of like, I don't know. Like he's been here a couple of years, he's really never shown anything. Now he was solid when he was coming in last year at the end of the season, and so I do feel like he's proven that he can be RB2, and that's all we're asking him to do. Now, you would want somebody else to step up, but nobody else has stepped up to beat him for the job. And so right now, Malik Davis is RB2. At number four, I'm cheating a little bit. I'm going to go with Julius Woods and Justin Barron. Julius Woods has been a name. He's a undrafted safety, and he's been talked about like all throughout camp. Justin Barron is also an undrafted linebacker who had a great splash at the Rams joint practice where he had 3 picks, and then it carried over into making some solid plays in the Seattle game. And Julius Woods also made some solid plays. He stood out. And so when you pair like what you're actually doing in practice and actually in game situations, that's, you're going to be talked about, you're going to be looked at. And these two guys are taking advantage of their opportunity. Like something that Brian Broaddus had brought up, and I think it applies to these two guys is that there's some players that you look at in practice and they don't look good. They don't look great in practice, but then you put them in the game situation and they look really good. Like Dak Prescott, when he first came out, I remember everybody down there who was following the Cowboys at training camp was not singing Dak Prescott's praises during practice. Like, in fact, they were a lot of them didn't think he was better than oh my goodness, I'm so mad. I can't remember. I'm blanking on the quarterback's name that was actually ahead of him. This was an actual undrafted quarterback, Jamil Showers. God, it was going to drive me crazy if I didn't remember. People had Jamil Showers over Dak Prescott based off of what was going on in practice. So the fact that when he actually got in the game, though, they was like, oh, okay, so he's a gamer. Like, he's an actual gamer. Like, Sam Williams is somebody that people have been raving about during practice. But when the preseason games actually come, he didn't do anything. And we've seen Sam Williams in the actual regular season games. Like I'm not gonna go on the rant of how much I'm ready for Sam Williams to be off this team. And so when I was hearing reports, like, oh, Sam Williams is looking really great right now, I'm like, oh god, they're gonna keep this. But that somebody who might look great in practice, but when game time comes, what's he doing? Didn't do anything. But Julius Woods and Justin Barron, I feel like are not having that issue. At number three, again, cheating a little bit. Joe Milton, Sam Howell. This was another thing. One, I was happy they got Sam Howell because he's played actual games in NFL. He's won some games in NFL. I'm not blown away by him. Like I don't think he's gonna be like the heir apparent to Dak Prescott or anything. But I was pleased that they brought him in to compete with Joe Milton because it wasn't like this thing where the Cowboys make a move where they had, they traded for Joe Milton and then they just anoint him as the backup. Like you got the job. Like they're actually trying to improve and have people compete for the job. And there was no confidence from having Joe Milton last season. He definitely has a cannon of an arm. He's definitely got some accuracy issues, and he just he needs some touch. Like we know he can scramble, he has that ability, which is great, but he didn't as a passer. It was not instilling confidence. Like you didn't feel good about it, and so he and Sam Howell really shined, and they looked really good in that preseason game versus Seattle. So it's encouraging to see these guys actually step up. At number two, got to give it to my boy Christian Parker. I remember like I posted on Blue Sky off of the Seahawks first drive. I was like, oh boy. I said, okay, this Cowboys defense is in mid-season form because they were, Kalen Carson, my guy, he had a rough day, and kept the drive going, and the Cowboys couldn't get off the field, and the Seahawks ended up scoring. But after that, the Cowboys pitched a shutout, and they were, I mean, even to the point where there was a muff punt later that set the Seahawks up at the 5-yard line, and they still didn't score. And the Cowboys got a goal line instead. And I know it's just preseason. Again, I'm not going nuts. I'm like, oh my God, this defense. Like, but pairing it with the reports that were coming out of the Rams practice and then seeing players actually making plays and making tackles. Like one of the big stats that came out of the Seahawks game was that no Cowboys defender missed a tackle. They didn't miss a tackle. Dog, do you know, like, I mean, I swear, I don't know what the numbers were. But if you told me that the Cowboys led the league in missed tackles last season on defense, I would believe you because it was putrid. It was absolutely putrid. Either they're taking the wrong angle or not wrapping up or getting blown out the play. Like, I don't even want to think about last year's defense anymore. But everybody's been hyped about Christian Parker from the moment he's been hired. And, some of us was like, hey, let's pump the brakes. Let's see what he does. You never call a defense or whatever. But what we've been seeing and what we saw coming out of that game, again, it's just preseason, but it's better than the crap that we've seen over the last two seasons. And at number one, of course, is Camden Brown, the undrafted wide receiver out of Georgia Southern. I didn't even know who Cam Brown was. It was funny because going into this last preseason game or this first preseason game, I had heard some reports from listening to the podcast or Talking Cowboys from the break, from the Doing All Right podcast with Vash Lombardi and Brian Broaddus. Like you were hearing some names. Like there's always some players in camp that you would hear making plays, and the people are talking about them, and they would come out and then say, hey, this is what this person is doing, and this person is really jumping off the page. Like last year, I remember Trayshawn Holden, a wide receiver from Oregon, everybody was raving about Trayshawn Holden, and then you see some plays from Trayshawn Holden. That appeared to be Camden Brown this year. Like, but again, this is a thing of shining in practice and then shining in actual game. I was hearing about Cam Brown, and then you saw him play, and you're like, yo, this dude can actually play. Like, he's really good. Like, his first touchdown reception from Sam Howell was awesome. The second one from Joe Milton, where he made a one-handed grab at the back pylon of the end zone, which was highlighted Joe Milton because he actually put some touch on the ball and and laid it up accurately. And then Cam Brown made a great play by one handing it and scoring another touchdown. So he had two touchdowns in that game. And he just looked natural. He looked good. He it looked like a perfect fit to pair with CD, GP, and Ryan Flournoy. And it just to the extent where I mean, and I'm not even going to shy away, like, because Jonathan Mingo actually also looked pretty decent in the game, and he made a great hustle play on special teams to stop a touchdown. So it's going to be interesting to see. One, I do think he's going to make the team. I just don't think that from what the reports have been coming out and what he's shown just in this one preseason game is that unless he like completely messes the bid the rest of the preseason, I don't think they'll be able to sneak him on. I mean, but it's so funny I say that because every every year there's somebody at the Cowboys cut that us as fans go nuts over, like, what? How did you cut him? What are you doing? You're not gonna get him on the practice squad. And then, then that person ends up on the practice squad, and we was all freaking out for no reason because other teams aren't looking at this stuff the way we are, and they're not like they probably don't give a f who Cam Brown is or anything like that. But I'm definitely rooting for him. He definitely shined in that first preseason game. So up next, we're gonna get into the actual losers of preseason thus far. You're listening to the 0 to 1. Okay, so let's get into the losers of the preseason thus far. And again, this is strictly based off of what we saw from the Seattle Cowboys game this past Saturday. And so up first, I want to say, and I'm gonna explain this. Luke Schoonmaker. Uh, reason being, not that he didn't even really do anything. Like he didn't do anything bad in that game or anything. He hasn't even really done anything super bad in training camp, from what I'm hearing. In fact, like most people believe that he is safe. He is not gonna get beat out by Michael Trigg, the undrafted tight end from Baylor, or DJ Rogers. Noah Fant, unfortunately, has been injured, so he's not going to be a factor. But it's very clear that Luke Schoonmaker was a terrible pick in the second round. Most Cowboy fans were quite furious and unhappy when he was drafted. And much like Mozzie Smith, he has done nothing to make you feel any better about it. Like it's going to get better. The reason why I put him at number 5, though, is because Michael Trigg actually showed up in that game, and he was semi-decent in terms of blocking. And so most fans are actively rooting for Michael Trigg to beat Luke Schoonmaker. Um, and again, he didn't do anything bad in the game, but he pretty much does what Schoonmaker does week in, week out, which is absolutely nothing. Like it's nothing that stands out. It's nothing that makes you go, we gotta keep this guy. He's gotta be on the roster. And so he's a loser in this sense that everybody's still pretty much actively rooting for you to not make this team. So and that didn't change off of that game. So at number 4, if you don't live in Dallas, which I do not, you were subject to the Seattle announcing crew because Seattle. It was a home Seattle game, and so you got the home Seattle broadcasting crew, like much like if you listen to if you were down in Dallas. Thankfully, you got to listen to the Cowboys broadcast crew, and I've heard them before. And yes, they're geared towards the team, but and of course I'm biased, but I've never been overly annoyed by like the Cowboys broadcast crew the way I was annoyed by the Seattle broadcast crew. Like they were very, they were incredibly obnoxious and annoying. And yes, they had to be a homer because yes, they're rooting for Seattle. They want Seattle to do good things and talk about Seattle players. I had zero issue with that. It was just some of the observation and analysis was really, really insanely bad, and it was really highlighted by Michael Bennett taking an unnecessary shot at Dak Prescott, where he, which I do not understand the vitriol that Dak gets from somebody like granted, okay, he's a Cowboys quarterback, but he is not constantly on TV. He is not in commercials like nonstop like Peyton Manning was, and he doesn't come off to me like whenever I've heard Dak Prescott in interviews, he doesn't come off as overly arrogant or cocky. He's like, if anything, he's almost like super political. Like it's almost like he's like running for office and he's got these perfectly mapped out answers to questions and sometimes he'll say something provocative but it's very rare like he like the most provocative things I've ever heard him say is like after they lost to the 49ers the one time in the playoffs and the refs did a really crappy job in terms of like saying he wasn't set and then holding stuff up and then he said the fans was booing the refs and he was like good for the or they was throwing stuff at the refs and he was like good for him like that's the worst thing he's ever said to me or done in terms of not being PC after a game and so I don't get the vitriol, but Michael Bennett took this unnecessary shot, and it also just shows like careful who you actually get your analysis from. Where he's like, "Oh, Dak Prescott has had all the resources to be a champion. He's had a great offensive line his entire career. He's great running game with DeMarco Murray and I'm sitting there like, what the I was like, first off, Dax only had like the best offensive line he's had was his rookie season in 2016. That's where he had Travis Frederick still played. You had Zach Zach Martin was Hall of Fame, like future Hall of Famer Zach Martin still there, and you had Tyron Smith at the height of his power still there, and so it's like that's that was when they actually had a great offensive line, and they had Lionel Collins at left guard. Lyle Collins at left guard, who was really solid there. And so it's like, but it's so funny or weird to me to hear people talk about like when he said DeMarco Murray, I was sitting there like, what the fuck? I was like, DeMarco Murray, how's this dude? I was like, maybe Dak Prescott has met DeMarco Murray. I don't even know if he's actually met DeMarco Murray because DeMarco Murray was long gone when Dak Prescott took over as quarterback. He was playing in freaking Tennessee at that point, dog. Like, what the F are you talking about? And so, and then when he was like, oh, he's got a top line defense. No, the F he hasn't. Like even when Dan Quinn came and did turn the defense around, they weren't a number like they weren't a top 5 defense. Like, yes, they led the league in takeaways. They were a great takeaway defense. They led the league in takeaways 2 years, but when they would come up against really great offenses, that's why a lot of fans turned on Dan Quinn. Like, remember what the F it looked like in that Green Bay playoff loss. What you talking about? And the other one, the reason I said second half ref is because it was really weird. It was like for some reason they had like this one lead ref in the first half, and then they had the second half ref who was a different guy, and he did not seem to understand or know what to say or what to go. Or it might have been like the first time he was on the microphone. He didn't know where to point at times. It was bad. And it was so funny because then you had the horrible Seattle announcers like, it's preseason for everybody. It's preseason for... And they literally kept saying that. It's preseason for everybody. Like 3 or 4 times. Yes, we get it. We got it. We understand it's preseason for everybody. Shut the f up and move on. So that's who I can is the loser of coming in at number 4. At number 3, man. So... the starters didn't play, and the Cowboys got a depth problem in terms of offensive line. A lot of the reports coming out, and this was even before this game, was the roughness in terms of the offensive line. Drew Shelton, the offensive tackle they took out of Penn State, which a number of people who actually break down offensive linemen were not high on Drew Shelton. And unfortunately, the reports coming out of camp has not been anything to assuage those fears. It just didn't look good. Like it looked really bad in the first half. It actually got better in the second half, especially in terms of the run blocking when you got Malik Davis in there and Israel Abanikanda. um, they had a lot more running room than Jaden Blue and Phil Maffa, and so the running game looked a little bit better. They were actually really good in pass pro for Joe Milton, which gave him time, and so it didn't. I will say, like, I put them here, but it was troubling to the extent where I'm praying that the Cowboys offensive line stays very healthy. Like, I'm not even going to get into the whole Terrence Steele thing right here. There's enough people that talk about that, but it's hard to get offensive linemen, especially starting caliber offensive linemen. But it's even harder just to get depth because most teams, like even if they have offensive linemen that aren't going to make the starting roster, they're usually protected in terms of not going to practice squad so they could get poached. Because if you can show that you can actually play, then you want to keep that player because injuries happen, and especially on the offensive line. So let's just knock on wood and pray that the Cowboys offensive line's first team stays healthy because it's going to be bad if they don't. Um, at number two, ooh, buddy, I tell you who probably loved Matt Eberflus, and that was Nick Sorensen because Matt Eberflus was freaking horrible as a defense coordinator, but I feel like that was very close, and they were running a race neck and neck, and Eberflus might have just edged them because you see defense all the time. But special teams was abysmal. Like I knew that losing John Fossil as a special teams coordinator was going to hurt. I didn't think it was going to hurt as bad as it did last year. I mean, this special teams unit for the Cowboys was terrible. Like they had horrible starting position. Uh, Punt coverage was bad. Kickoff coverage was bad. Like they were all like most teams you would see. It was mind boggling. Like where you would see the average. Like it did not help the defense that the opposing team's offense was probably pretty much starting at like the 40-yard line pretty much every single time. Like they were it was well past the 30. Like it was they were getting like half of the field like every single time they were going up against them. And the coverage again, even in this Seattle game, it was rough. It was bad. Like they almost gave up a touchdown return if Jonathan Mingo didn't save them. Trayshawn Holden, for whatever the reason, tried to field a punt and he fielded a punt inside the 5 one time, which is a big no because you wanted to get the touchback, and then he tried to field a punt that landed and then muffed it, so Seattle ended up getting the ball to 5, and the Cowboys defense bailed them out. But I feel like that's coaching. Like it's in the same thing where like Cavante Turpin last year kept getting penalized for fake fair catches, and it didn't make any sense to me how the coaches wasn't instilling in him. Like again, the coach probably was telling him, and for whatever the reason, Cavante Turpin was doing his own thing. But that speaks to coaching to me. Like constant penalties on special teams, that speaks to coaching. And so, when I remember we were talking about coaches that we wanted going last year, when we were talking about when the season was over, and Nick Sorensen was high up there. And bro, please, it can't, like, you can't keep status quo. Like everybody's hoping that like the defense gets better, and they're like, oh, there's no way it can get worse. My fear with the special teams is it stays the same because last year was terrible. So yeah, that was number two. And number one, man, again, I'm cheating a little bit because at first I had put him in. I said, well, you know what, it's equal. And Trayshawn Holden, I'm not even gonna harp on it too much because he literally got cut after this once the Cowboys signed Von Miller, and so like I mentioned, I do not understand what was going through his brain, why he tried to field a punt. He muffed it. Seattle got the ball at the 5-yard line. He immediately went to the sideline and put a towel over his head because he knew in the preseason, like you get, and I get it. He's getting very limited opportunities. You got this undrafted rookie Cam Brown making plays during practice, plus the very limited reps is dudes like 4 or 5 dudes battling for one spot and wide receivers deep. Like the first three wide receivers is locked down. Even Cavante Turpin, who I'm praying is more like wide receiver 5 is guaranteed a spot on this team for his return ability. So there's literally only like one spot left, unless the Cowboys keep 6 wide receivers, which I just don't see. But there's literally like only one spot left, and so you want to try to make a play, but he muffed it, punt. He knew he was going. Cowboys signed Von Miller. It was an easy move. He got cut. Kalen Carson, bro. Oh my goodness. Like we are long removed from that very first game versus the Cleveland Browns under under um, defensive coordinator Mike Zimmer, where we saw him step in for when you know Deron Bland wasn't going to start the season, and he looked decent. Like you were surprised at Kalen Carson. Like, oh snap! Cowboys might have found another one. He had a terrible season. But a lot of people under Mike Zimmer at the beginning of the season. Actually, see, that's the funny thing. I felt like the defense actually got better towards the end of the year under Mike Zimmer, but Kayla Carson has never recovered. And it's, you know, you saw him last year, you saw little glimmers, but the defense was so bad. It Any small sign of good play, people would take notice of. But yeah, Kayla Carson had a horrible day. He was penalized at least 3 times for pass interference. He was getting beat. Was like, yeah, he didn't look good. And you know, I've been very pleasantly surprised by Siobhan Ravel and Kobe Durant. A lot of people are sleeping on Deron Bland, man, and I get it. Deron Bland had a horrible season last year, and then he ended up missing the rest of the year with a foot injury, which was the second surgery he had to perform on his foot. And so I get it. There's a lot of doubt surrounding Deron Bland. I still think Deron Bland can play, especially when healthy. He's the pick six king, and I still see that in there. So, but yeah, Kalen Carson did not have a great day, and it didn't look good. And he definitely was a big time loser, especially when you have like other players like Amir Speed getting a lot of buzz, Devin Moore, who they drafted from Florida, getting a lot of buzz still. And so it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, he did not come up as a big winner in that one. So the Cowboys will take on the Cardinals this Saturday night, I believe. I will talk briefly about the joint practice that went down from the Saints and my thoughts on that, especially the brawl that happened. This has been the 0 to 100 podcast. Okay, let's talk about the Cowboys Saints joint practice. Uh, Unlike the Cowboys Rams practice, where you got a lot of reports in regards to the good things that was going on. I mean, from my understanding, from the reports that came out, is the offense was very productive, and they pretty much handled their business on their side of the ball. The defensive side, you can't even say they were productive or it was dominant because most of the time they was just fighting. Like it was funny because like as Patrick Nosey Walker was like tweeting and reporting like as I tweet this, it's the fifth fight. Oh no, make that the sixth fight that is broken out in between the Saints and Cowboys players. And so, you know, from my standpoint, I I don't know. I guess it's like I feel like they're doing it because this stuff wouldn't happen in game, and you see a lot of fights in training camp. Period, and it's usually like amongst their own teammates. And so when you see that, you think like, oh, what's the point of that? So if you see fights amongst teammates, you're pretty much guaranteed you're going to see fights when another team comes in there and they don't know these people and they take offense to something or they want to prove a point. I do think it's like at the end of the day it's unproductive, but I take Brian Schottenheimer's attitude about it where it's like we ain't gonna take ish from anybody, and I'm paraphrasing what he said, but that's pretty much what he said. And I want them to have that mentality, but you do want to be productive. I think the thing that I take away from it, though, again, is that the offense was very productive and controlling, and I'm like, it just goes on to show that I have zero fear in regards to the offense and what they're going to do. Still has some question marks in regards to the defense because Chris Olave had a really good day versus pretty much every single Cowboys defensive back. But again, I'm not like it wasn't like they said they got dominated or it was like it looked really bad. Like it was the only thing that everybody seemed to focus on and talk about was the fighting, and I don't really care about that because you're not gonna see that in the regular season. So we'll see how it translates. And again, I will be back this weekend to talk about what happens in the Cowboys Cardinals game. But for that, that's going to do it for this segment of the 0 to 100 podcast. I hope you guys, these haters, come out here and talk about, oh, you go Cowboys fans again. Like, yeah, whatever. Like, we can be happy when you see good things happening and things that are different than what's happened in the past off seasons. We can be happy. So be excited because I'm excited about what's coming.